The scent of lavender and old memories filled the sun-drenched bedroom on the third floor of the Santoro estate. Grace Brown adjusted the silk pillows behind Elena Santoro's frail back, her dark hands moving with the tenderness of a daughter rather than hired help. "There, Mrs. Santoro. More comfortable?" Elena's weathered hand reached up to pat Grace's cheek, her touch paper-thin but warm. "What would I do without you, cara mia? 5 years you've been with me. 5 years of grace." She smiled at her own wordplay, eyes twinkling despite the Parkinson's that ravaged her body. Grace returned the smile, though something flickered behind her eyes, something ancient and unresolved. "You'd do just fine, Mrs. Santoro. You're stronger than you think." "Bah!" Elena waved dismissively, her hand trembling with the effort. "I'm a dying old woman, whose son barely visits anymore. Without you, I'd have only these empty walls for company." The words hung heavy with truth. In 5 years, Grace had watched Elena's son visit exactly 12 times. She'd counted. Each visit lasted no more than an hour, duty calls squeezed between business meetings and whatever darkness occupied a Mafia boss's schedule. Luca Santoro. The name alone made the household staff nervous. The Phantom of New York, the newspapers called him. A man who'd inherited his father's criminal empire at 25 and expanded it into something that touched every corner of the city's underworld. But to Grace, he was something else entirely. Something she couldn't afford to think about, while his mother held her hand. "He called this morning," Grace said softly, smoothing the blanket across Elena's legs. "Your son. He's coming home today." Elena's face transformed hope, blooming like spring after a harsh winter. "Luca? Today? Are you certain?" "Yes, ma'am. He said he'd arrive by noon." Grace didn't mention the coldness in his voice when he'd called, the clipped efficiency of a man checking items off a list. "I'll be there at noon. Make sure she's presentable. I don't have much time." "Oh, Grace." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Help me look beautiful. I want my boy to see his mother, not this shell." "You're always beautiful," Grace whispered, but she was already moving toward the closet, pulling out Elena's favorite dress, the blue one that matched her eyes. As Grace helped Elena bathe and dress, the older woman talked. She always talked about Luca, the boy he'd been before his father died, before the weight of the family business crushed whatever softness existed in his soul. "He had the kindest heart," Elena murmured as Grace fastened pearl earrings. "Would bring me flowers from the garden, would read to me at night. Then Paolo died, and my sweet boy. He disappeared. This cold stranger took his place." Grace's hands trembled slightly. She knew about that transformation. She knew more than Elena could ever imagine. "People change, Mrs. Santoro. Life hardens us." "No." Elena grasped Grace's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "People don't change, they hide. My Luca is still in there, buried under layers of darkness. I know it. A mother always knows." Before Grace could respond, the sound of car engines rumbled through the open window. Her heart stuttered. She moved to look outside, careful to stay hidden behind the curtain. 3 black SUVs rolled through the estate gates like a funeral procession. Armed men emerged first, scanning the property with military precision. Then the rear door of the center vehicle opened. Luca Santoro stepped out. Grace's breath caught, despite 5 years of preparation for this moment. He was taller than she, remembered 6'3" of controlled power wrapped in a midnight blue suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Dark hair styled with casual perfection, sharp jawline that looked carved from marble, and those eyes, storm gray eyes that had once looked at a 16-year-old girl with something almost like kindness. Before everything went wrong, before her brother died. "Is he here? Can you see him?" Elena called from the bed, unable to turn her neck far enough to see the window. "Yes," Grace managed, her voice steadier than her pulse. "He's here." She watched Luca say something to his men, his expression unreadable, cold, controlled. Every inch, the ruthless boss who ruled New York's underworld with calculated precision. This was the man responsible for her brother's death. This was the man she'd spent 5 years getting close to through his mother, the only person he still had the capacity to love. This was the man whose world she planned to burn down from the inside. But as Luca looked up at the third-floor window as those gray eyes locked onto hers across the distance, Grace felt something dangerous shift in her chest. Recognition, memory, the ghost of a 17-year-old boy who'd once stopped his father's men from harassing a scared girl at a street corner. Leave her alone. She's just a kid. Luca's eyes narrowed, and Grace realized her mistake. She'd let the curtain slip. He'd seen her face. After 5 years of carefully avoiding him during his brief visits, of ensuring she was always conveniently absent, her luck had run out. The hunter had spotted his prey. He just didn't know yet that she was hunting him too. Have you ever had to get close to someone you were supposed to hate? How do you think Grace will handle seeing Luca face to face? Grace forced herself to step back from the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. She smoothed her uniform, a simple black dress that marked her as staff, invisible, beneath notice, and turned back to Elena with a practiced smile. He'll be up soon, Mrs. Santoro. Let me fix your hair one more time. Elena's hands fluttered with nervous energy, the tremors worse when she was anxious. Do I look all right? Grace, tell me the truth. You look beautiful. And she did. Despite the disease eating away at her motor control, despite being 72 years old, Elena Santoro possessed an elegance that time couldn't fully erase. Grace had come to genuinely care for this woman, a complication she hadn't anticipated when she'd forged references and applied for this position 5 years ago. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful, the kind of footsteps that announced power before the person even entered the room. Grace's spine stiffened. The door opened without a knock. Luca Santoro filled the doorway, and the room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was more imposing, up-close, broad shoulders, contained violence in every line of his body. His grey eyes swept the room in a clinical assessment before landing on his mother. Something flickered in those eyes, brief, almost human. Mama. Luca. Elena's face lit up like sunrise. Oh, my boy. Come, let me see you. He crossed the room in 3 strides, and Grace stepped back, pressing herself against the wall, becoming invisible. It was a skill she'd perfected over 5 years, the art of being present but unnoticed. Luca bent to kiss his mother's cheek, his movements stiff, as if affection was a language he'd forgotten how to speak. You look well. Liar. Elena laughed, touching his face with trembling fingers. But you always were terrible at hiding things from me. You look tired, figlio mio. Are you sleeping? Enough. His voice was granite, smooth, hard, cold. The doctor says your condition is stable. The doctor talks to you more than you talk to me, Elena said, but there was no accusation in her tone, only sadness. Sit. Stay with me for a while. Grace can bring us tea. For the first time since entering, Luca's eyes shifted to Grace. The impact was physical. Those grey eyes weren't just cold, they were calculating, sharp as surgical steel. He studied her face with an intensity that made her want to run, to hide, to disappear into the walls. Did he recognize her? Impossible. She'd been 16 the last time he saw her, a terrified girl watching her brother be dragged into an alley by Santoro enforcers. She was 28 now, her face leaner, her body changed by age and grief and purpose. You're the nurse, Luca said. It wasn't a question. Caregiver, sir. Grace Brown. Her voice didn't shake. Small victory. How long have you been here? 5 years, Mr. Santoro. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, that anyone had lasted that long in his mother's employ. The woman went through staff like water, or so Grace had heard. Except Grace had stayed, had become indispensable, had earned Elena's trust and love. All according to plan. Grace is an angel, Elena interjected. She's been with me longer than anyone. I don't know what I'd do without her. 5 years. Luca's eyes never left Grace's face. Where were you before this? Grace's pulse spiked, but her expression remained neutral. Street Mary's Hospital, geriatric care. Your mother's previous nurse, Mrs. Chen, recommended me when she retired. All lies. Beautiful, documented, unverifiable lies that had cost her 6 months and most of her savings to construct. Luca nodded slowly, but his eyes said he didn't quite believe her. Or maybe that was paranoia, the natural state of a man who'd built an empire on distrust and violence. Mama needs consistency, he said finally. If you've lasted 5 years, you must be doing something right. I care about your mother, Mr. Santoro. That's all. Everyone wants something, Miss Brown. The question is, what do you want? The air between them crackled with tension. Elena looked between them, confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Grace met his gaze steadily. I want Mrs. Santoro to be comfortable and happy. That's my job. Luca, don't interrogate the poor girl, Elena chided. "Grace, dear, bring us some of that lemon cake you made yesterday. My son needs sweetness in his life." Grace nodded and moved toward the door, grateful for the escape. But as she passed Luca, he spoke again, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I never forget a face, Miss Brown, and something about yours." Grace's blood turned to ice, but she kept walking. In the hallway, she pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes. "Marcus, I'm doing this for you, for what they took from us." Her brother's face flashed in her memory, bright smile, warm eyes, dreams of medical school crushed under the weight of Santoro boots. She straightened her spine and headed for the kitchen. The game had begun. Grace's hands shook as she arranged lemon cake slices on Elena's finest china. Through the kitchen window, she could see Luca's security detail stationed around the estate like chess pieces, strategic, lethal, always watching. She'd planned for this moment, rehearsed it 1,000 times, but nothing had prepared her for the way Luca's eyes had dissected her, as if he could peel back her skin and read the revenge written on her bones. "Deep breaths, Grace," she whispered to herself. "You've come too far to fall apart now." She loaded the tea service onto a cart and made her way back upstairs. The door to Elena's room was slightly ajar, and voices drifted through mother and son, speaking in rapid Italian. Grace's language skills were limited, but she caught fragments. "Too isolated up here. I'm happy, Luca. Grace takes excellent care. Don't trust easily, Mama. 5 years is convenient. Too convenient." Grace's stomach dropped. She knocked firmly before entering, interrupting whatever suspicion was taking root in Luca's mind. "Your cake, Mrs. Santoro." She wheeled the cart in with practiced efficiency. Elena's face was flushed. Whether from excitement or argument, Grace couldn't tell. Luca stood by the window, his back to them, radiating tension. "Grace, tell my stubborn son that I'm perfectly fine here. He wants to move me to some facility in Manhattan." Elena's voice carried both affection and frustration. Grace's heart stuttered. If Elena left this house, 5 years of careful planning would collapse. She needed to be here, close to Luca, when the final pieces fell into place. "Mrs. Santoro is quite comfortable in familiar surroundings," Grace said carefully, pouring tea. "Change can be disorienting for patients with Parkinson's. Patients with Parkinson's also need specialized care," Luca countered, turning from the window. "Round-the-clock medical supervision, not just a caregiver, however dedicated." "Grace is more than dedicated," Elena protested. "She's family." The word hung in the air, like a grenade. Luca's expression hardened. "She's an employee, Mama. There's a difference." Grace felt the sting of his words, even though they were true, even though she'd engineered this exact dynamic, becoming so essential to Elena that any threat to Grace would wound the old woman. "Mr. Santoro, perhaps we could discuss this privately?" Grace suggested, her voice steady despite the war raging in her chest. Luca's eyebrows rose fractionally. Bold move for hired help, but he nodded. "Fine. Mama, eat your cake. We'll be in the hall." Outside Elena's room, Luca closed the door with careful precision. The hallway suddenly felt impossibly narrow, the air charged with something dangerous. "Speak," he commanded. Grace lifted her chin. "Your mother's health is stable, her medication is managed, her physical therapy is consistent. Moving her now would be traumatic. You're not a doctor." "No, but I've been here every single day for 5 years. Can you say the same?" The words escaped before she could stop them, a crack in her careful facade. Luca's eyes flashed, and for a moment, Grace thought she'd pushed too far. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed, short, sharp, without humor. "You've got spine. I'll give you that. Your mother needs stability, Mr. Santoro, not upheaval. What my mother needs is safety." Luca stepped closer, invading her space with calculated intimidacy. "Do you know what I do, Miss Brown? The kind of enemies I have? I know you're a powerful man." Her pulse thundered, but she held her ground. "Powerful men have powerful enemies. This estate is secure, but concentrated care in the city would be safer, better protected, or it would isolate her from the only home she's known for 40 years. Grace's voice softened. "She's dying, Mr. Santoro. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but Parkinson's doesn't get better. Don't let her last months be spent in sterile rooms surrounded by strangers." Something passed over Luca's face pain, quickly masked. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know she lights up when you visit. I know she keeps a calendar counting the days between your calls. I know she's your mother, and she loves you even though you've built walls so high even she can't climb them. Luca's jaw clenched. You overstep. Maybe. But someone needs to. They stood inches apart, locked in a battle of wills. Grace could smell his cologne expensive, with notes of cedar and something darker. Could see the faint scar along his jawline, a reminder that even kings could bleed. You said you've been here 5 years, Luca said quietly, dangerously. Yet I've never seen you before today. Grace's mouth went dry. You're rarely here longer than an hour. I make myself scarce during family time. How convenient, how respectful, or how calculated. The accusation hung between them like a blade. Before Grace could respond, Elena's voice called from inside the room. Luca, Grace, is everything all right? Luca's eyes never left Grace's face. Run a background check, he said quietly. Full workup. I want to know everything about Grace Brown, where she came from, where she trained, every place she's worked, everyone she's ever known. Grace's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. Her false identity would hold. It had to. She'd paid enough to ensure it would. Do what you need to do, she said evenly. I have nothing to hide. Liar. Luca studied her for one more excruciating moment, then stepped back. For now, Mama stays, but I'll be watching Miss Brown, very carefully. He turned and walked back into Elena's room, leaving Grace alone in the hallway, her carefully constructed world beginning to crack at the seams. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the silver locket hidden beneath her uniform, the one that held Marcus's picture. Her brother's smile, frozen in time, reminded her why she was here. Why she couldn't fail. Even if Luca Santoro was nothing like the monster she'd expected him to be. The background check came back clean. Grace knew because Luca's lieutenant, a stone-faced man named Vincent, had delivered the news to Luca while she happened to be bringing Elena her afternoon medication. Through the partially open study door, she'd heard Vincent's report. Grace Brown, 28, nursing background, spotless record. She's exactly who she says she is, boss. Grace had allowed herself one breath of relief before continuing down the hallway. But Luca hadn't left. 3 days had passed since his arrival, and he showed no signs of returning to the city. He'd moved into the West Wing, conducted business from his father's old study, and worst of all, he'd started spending time with his mother. Real time. Every morning, he joined Elena for breakfast. Every afternoon, he sat with her in the garden while Grace supervised her physical therapy. Every evening, he read to her before bed old Italian poetry that made Elena's eyes shine with tears. It was destroying Grace's carefully maintained hatred. He's different when he's with her. Maria, the housekeeper, whispered one afternoon while they prepared lunch. More human. I've worked for the Santoros for 20 years, and I've never seen Luca like this. Grace said nothing, but she'd noticed too. The way Luca's voice softened when he spoke to Elena. The way his hand trembled slightly when he helped her stand. The way he looked at her when she wasn't watching, as if memorizing her face, preparing for inevitable loss. It didn't fit the narrative Grace had built. Monsters weren't supposed to be gentle with their mothers. Killers weren't supposed to read poetry. Grace? Elena's voice called from the sunroom. Could you come here, please? Grace found mother and son seated by the windows, afternoon light painting them in gold. Elena looked radiant, the best she'd been in months. Luca sat beside her, and for once, his expression wasn't carved from ice. Sit with us, Elena insisted, patting the chair beside her. Luca was just telling me about a charity gala next week for children's hospitals. Grace's eyebrows rose. You support children's hospitals? Luca's gaze met hers, cool and assessing. Surprised? Grace caught herself. I just didn't expect the big bad Mafia boss to have a heart. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. My father died of cancer when I was 15. Spent his last months in a hospital that barely had funding for pain medication. I remember that. I don't forget. The revelation hit Grace like a fist. She thought of Marcus, dying in an alley because Santoro men had beaten him for a debt he didn't owe. Where was Luca's mercy then? It's wonderful, she managed. I'm sure it helps many families. I want you to come, Elena announced suddenly. Both Grace and Luca turned to stare at her. Mama, Luca started. Grace has been cooped up in this house for 5 years, caring for me. She deserves one evening out. Besides, I'll feel better knowing someone familiar is watching over you. I have a dozen bodyguards for that, Luca said dryly. And I want Grace. Elena's tone brooked no argument. She goes, or I'll worry myself sick. Luca's jaw tightened. His eyes met Grace's across his mother, and she saw the calculation there. He didn't want her there, didn't trust her in his world. Good. The feeling was mutual. It's really not necessary, Mrs. Santoro, Grace began. I'm perfectly happy. Please, Elena interrupted, her hand trembling as she reached for Grace's. Humor an old woman. Let me give you something back for all you've given me. Grace looked at Elena's hopeful face, then at Luca's suspicious one, and realized she was trapped. Refusing would hurt Elena. Accepting would thrust her directly into Luca's world, dangerous, but potentially useful. If you insist, Grace said quietly. Wonderful. Elena clapped her hands together. Luca, you'll arrange everything? Address, shoes, hair. I can manage my own, Grace protested. Nonsense. You're going as my representative. You'll have the best. Elena's eyes sparkled with an excitement Grace hadn't seen in months. Oh, this will be lovely. After settling Elena for her afternoon rest, Grace tried to escape to her small room on the second floor, but Luca's voice stopped her at the stairs. Miss Brown, a word. She turned slowly. He stood in the hallway, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, looking every inch the dangerous man she knew him to be. You don't have to do this, he said. I can tell my mother you're ill. And disappoint her? I don't think so. This isn't your world. He moved closer, and Grace fought the urge to retreat. These are dangerous people, powerful people. One wrong word, one slip. I'm a caregiver, Mr. Santoro, not an idiot. I know how to be invisible. That's what worries me. His eyes searched her face. You're too good at it, too perfect. 5 years with my mother, and you've never asked for more money, never complained, never stepped out of line until now. Until now? Grace's spine stiffened. I didn't ask to go to this gala. Your mother insisted, and yet you agreed quickly enough. What exactly are you accusing me of? Luca was close now, close enough that Grace could see gold flecks in his grey eyes, close enough to be dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with violence. I don't know yet, he said softly, but I will. Everyone wants something, Miss Brown. You've spent 5 years positioning yourself as indispensable to the one person I still care about. So I'll ask you again, what do you want? Justice, Grace thought. Revenge, to watch your empire crumble the way my brother's dreams did. I want your mother to be happy, she said aloud. That's all. Liar. The word was gentle, almost curious, as if he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls. Grace lifted her chin. Believe what you want, Mr. Santoro. I'm going to check on your mother's medication schedule. She turned and walked away, feeling his eyes on her back like a physical touch. Her hands didn't start shaking until she reached her room and locked the door behind her. She pulled out her phone and stared at the last text message from her contact, the man who'd helped her build Grace Brown's identity 5 years ago. Package delivered. Evidence is buried in the East Garden. When you're ready. The evidence that would prove Luca Santoro had ordered her brother's death. The evidence that would destroy him. She'd been waiting 5 years for the right moment. But now, watching him care for his dying mother, seeing glimpses of the boy who'd once shown kindness to a scared girl on a street corner, Grace wasn't sure anymore what revenge was supposed to look like, or if she still had the heart to take it. The gala dress arrived in a garment bag that probably cost more than Grace's first car. Midnight blue silk that shimmered like water, with a neckline that was elegant rather than revealing. Shoes that actually fit. A stylist who transformed her natural curls into something sophisticated and intentional. Grace stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. You look beautiful, Cara, Elena breathed from her wheelchair, where Grace had positioned her to supervise the transformation. Like a princess. I look like I'm playing dress-up, Grace muttered, tugging at the dress. You look like you belong. Elena's eyes were knowing. Which terrifies you, doesn't it? The idea that you might fit into Luca's world. Grace's hands stilled. Mrs. Santoro. I'm old, not blind. Elena wheeled closer. I see how you look at him when you think no one's watching. And I see how he looks at you like you're a puzzle he's desperate to solve. He doesn't trust me. Good. Luca shouldn't trust easily. It's kept him alive this long. Elena reached up to adjust Grace's necklace, a simple diamond pendant. Luca had sent with the dress. But trust and attraction are different things, aren't they? Grace's cheeks burned. I'm not attracted to your son. Another lie. Elena smiled sadly. Oh, my dear girl. Whatever brought you to my door 5 years ago, whatever you're hiding, and yes, I know you're hiding something, just remember that people are more than their worst moments. Luca is more than what he's become. Before Grace could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Luca entered, and the heir left the room. He wore a tuxedo like he was born in it, all sharp lines and controlled power. His hair was styled back, emphasizing the strong lines of his face. But it was his eyes that caught Grace, the way they widened fractionally when they landed on her, the way something heated flickered there before his mask slammed back into place. You look acceptable, he said, his voice carefully neutral. High praise, Grace replied dryly. Elena laughed. You both look beautiful. Now go, before you're late. And Luca, take care of her. Mama, I have 12 armed men. Take care of her, Elena repeated, and there was steel beneath the affection. The drive into Manhattan was silent, oppressive. Grace sat in the back of the SUV beside Luca, hyper-aware of every breath he took, every slight movement. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows like fallen stars. The rules are simple, Luca finally said. Stay close. Don't talk to anyone I don't introduce you to. Don't mention my mother or where you work. So I'm supposed to be invisible? You're supposed to be safe. His jaw tightened. These people are sharks, Miss Brown. They smell weakness and they attack. And what am I supposed to say if someone asks who I am? Tell them you're with me. That's all they need to know. The weight of those words settled between them. The gala was everything Grace expected: crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than she made in a week. But it was the people that made her skin crawl. She recognized faces from news reports, politicians, celebrities, and underneath it all, the criminals who really ran the city. Luca's hand settled on the small of her back as they entered, warm and possessive. Stay close, he murmured. For the next hour, Grace played her part. She smiled politely, made small talk about nothing, let Luca guide her through the crowd like a ship navigating dangerous waters. And she watched, observed, saw the fear in people's eyes when they looked at Luca, the way they deferred to him, the power he wielded with a single glance. This was the man who'd killed her brother. She needed to remember that. Luca Santoro. A voice cut through the crowd, smooth, cultured, dangerous. I didn't expect to see you here. Grace turned to see a man approaching, silver-haired and elegant in a white dinner jacket. But there was something predatory in his smile, something that made Grace's instincts scream danger. Luca's hand tightened on her back. Dimitri, still alive, I see. Disappointing, isn't it? Dimitri's eyes slid to Grace, and she felt stripped bare. And who is this exquisite creature? No one you need to know. Come now, don't be rude. I'm Dmitri Volkov. He extended his hand to Grace, and she had no choice but to take it. His grip lingered too long. Any friend of Luca's is someone I'm very interested in meeting. We should move on, Luca said, his voice tight. But Dmitri stepped closer, effectively blocking their exit. I heard about your mother, Luca. Terrible thing, Parkinson's. She must require round-the-clock care. Grace felt Luca's entire body tense beside her. Leave my mother out of this, Dmitri. Of course, of course. Dimitri's smile widened. Though I imagine having someone trustworthy, caring for her must be such a comfort. Tell me, darling, how long have you been working for the Santoro family? The question was a trap. Grace could feel it. I really should, she began. 5 years, Dmitri continued, as if she hadn't spoken. That's what my sources tell me. 5 years ago, Grace Brown appeared with impeccable references and became indispensable to Elena Santoro. Interesting timing, don't you think? Grace's blood turned to ice. What are you playing at, Dmitri? Luca's voice was deadly quiet. Just making conversation. Dmitri pulled out his phone, swiped, and turned the screen toward them. Though I have to wonder, does Luca know that 5 years ago, almost to the day, his men killed a young medical student named Marcus Williams, beat him to death in an alley over a debt that wasn't even his? The photo on the screen was Grace, younger, crying, holding her brother's hand in a hospital bed during his final hours. The world tilted. And does he know? Dmitri continued, his voice silk over steel. That Marcus Williams had a sister who disappeared shortly after his death, only to resurface months later with a new name and a sudden interest in caring for the mother of the man who killed her brother? Luca turned to Grace, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. Is this true? Grace couldn't breathe. 5 years of planning, of patience, of careful construction shattered in 30 seconds. Luca, she whispered, answer me. His voice cracked like a whip. Did you come into my mother's life to get revenge on me? The ballroom had gone quiet around them. People were watching, sensing blood in the water. Grace met his eyes, those grey eyes that had haunted her dreams and nightmares for 5 years, and knew there was no point in lying anymore. Yes, she said quietly, I came to destroy you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Luca's face went blank completely, terrifyingly blank. Then he grabbed her arm, his grip iron hard, and began pulling her toward the exit. Luca, wait. Not here. His voice was barely human. Not in front of them. He dragged her through the crowd, past the shocked faces and whispered speculations, out into the cold night air. His SUV appeared as if summoned, and he shoved her inside with barely controlled violence. The door slammed. They were alone in the back seat, the privacy screen up, and Grace had never been more terrified in her life. Talk, Luca commanded, his voice shaking with rage. Now, all of it, or I swear to God, your men killed my brother. The words exploded out of Grace, 5 years of grief and rage finally breaking free. Marcus Williams, he was 23 years old. He was going to be a doctor, and your men beat him to death because someone told them he owed money to one of your loan sharks. But it wasn't him. It was his roommate, and Marcus tried to explain, but they didn't care. They just kept hitting him until her voice broke. Tears streamed down her face, ruining the makeup, destroying the careful facade. I watched him die, she whispered. He held my hand and told me to be strong, and then he was gone. 23 years old, and he died in an alley like garbage. Luca's face was white. I didn't. I never. You gave the order. You run this city. Every death, every broken bone, every destroyed life, it all comes back to you. I didn't know. Luca's hands were shaking. I swear, I didn't know about your brother. Would it have mattered? Grace laughed bitterly. How many Marcus Williamses are there, Luca? How many mistakes? How many innocent people ground up in the machine you built? Silence filled the SUV like poison. Then Luca pulled out his phone and made a call. Vincent, I need you to pull files from 5 years ago. Marcus Williams. I want to know everything: who gave the order, who carried it out. Everything. A pause. I don't care what time it is. I want it within the hour. He hung up and looked at Grace, and for the first time, she saw something other than control in his eyes. She saw anguish. My mother, he said hoarsely. This whole time you were using my mother. I never hurt her. Grace's voice cracked. I love her, Luca. I didn't expect to, but I do. These 5 years, caring for her, it stopped being about revenge and became real. Then why didn't you leave? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning Grace wasn't ready to face. Because I needed to know, she whispered. I needed to understand how someone who reads poetry to his dying mother could build an empire on blood. I needed to hate me, Luca finished. But you can't, can you? That's the problem. Their eyes met, and Grace saw her own confusion reflected back at her. I should hate you, she said. You should, but I don't know if I can anymore. Luca's hand rose, almost against his will, and touched her face. His thumb brushed away a tear, the gesture impossibly gentle from hands that had ordered so much violence. I'm sorry, he said, and the words sounded torn from somewhere deep. For your brother, for every Marcus Williams, for becoming the monster my father raised me to be. Grace's breath caught. Then his phone rang, Vincent, calling back, and everything was about to change again. Can revenge and love exist in the same heart? What would you do in Grace's position? Continue with your plan or choose a different path? Luca answered the phone on the first ring, his eyes never leaving Grace's face. Talk. Vincent's voice crackled through the speaker. Boss, you're not going to like this. I already don't like it. Tell me about Marcus Williams. A pause. Then, the order came from your father, not you. 5 years ago, you were in Milan handling the Baroni situation. Your father was still running day-to-day operations. The loan shark who claimed Williams owed money was Tony Greco, one of your father's old guard. Luca's jaw clenched. Continue. Greco's enforcers grabbed the wrong guy. Williams tried to tell them, but they were drunk, high, looking to make an example. Beat him so badly he died 3 days later in the hospital. Your father found out, had Greco killed for the mistake, but kept it quiet. Didn't want you knowing about the mess when you got back. Grace watched the color drain from Luca's face. Why wasn't I told? His voice was deadly quiet. Your father's orders. He said you were too soft, that you'd want to compensate the family, make it public. He wanted it buried. Luca closed his eyes. Where's the documentation? Encrypted files in your father's old safe, the one in the basement office. He kept records of everything insurance, he called it. Boss, there's more. What? Greco wasn't working alone. He had protection. Someone higher up was covering for him. Someone who wanted Williams dead specifically. Grace's heart stopped. What? Who? Luca demanded, still digging. But boss, if this goes as deep as I think, someone in your organization wanted that kid dead and used your father's operation to do it. The call ended. Silence filled the SUV like a living thing. My brother wasn't random, Grace whispered. Someone targeted him. Luca's hands were shaking with rage or guilt. She couldn't tell. We'll find out who. I swear to you, Grace, we'll find out. Why do you care? The question came out broken. You didn't know him. Why does it matter now? Because you matter. The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. Because my mother loves you, and somehow, despite everything, He stopped, jaw clenching. We need to get back to the estate. If someone targeted your brother 5 years ago, and you've been positioning yourself close to my family, they might know who you really are. Dimitri knew. Dimitri knows everything. That's what makes him dangerous. Luca pulled out his phone again. I'm calling the estate. We need to make sure my mother... The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Luca's face went white. He dialed again. Nothing. Drive, he shouted to the front. Get us back to the estate now. The SUV lurched forward, tires squealing. Luca was already making calls to Vincent, to his security team, to anyone who could get to Elena faster than they could. Grace's mind raced. Luca, if someone wanted Marcus dead, and they know I've been close to your mother, they'd use her to get to you, to get to me. Luca's voice was ice and fire. Everyone I love becomes a target. It's why I stayed away, why I kept my distance from Mama. But you got close. You made her love you. You made me... He didn't finish. The 20-minute drive back to the estate took 12. They screeched through the gates to find chaos, security vehicles everywhere, lights blazing, armed men shouting orders. Vincent ran to meet them as they burst from the SUV. Boss, we found the night guards unconscious, drugged. Someone got into the house. Grace was running before anyone could stop her. Through the front doors, up the stairs, down the hallway to Elena's room. The door was open wrong. It was always closed at night and inside. The room was empty. Elena's wheelchair sat abandoned, her medication scattered on the floor, and on the pillow, a single photograph. Grace picked it up with trembling hands. It was Marcus, her brother, with a red X drawn across his face. No, the word tore from her throat. No, no, no. Luca appeared beside her, taking the photo. His face transformed into something terrifying, cold, calculated. The monster she'd always known existed beneath the surface. Vincent, he said, his voice eerily calm. Call everyone, every contact, every favor owed. I want Dmitry Volkov found within the hour. I want to know everyone he's spoken to, everywhere he's been, everyone he works with. Boss, you think Volkov took her? He knew about Grace. He revealed her at the gala specifically to destabilize us, to separate us from the estate. This was planned. Luca's hands clenched into fists. He's sending a message. Grace's legs gave out. She collapsed onto Elena's bed, the woman's lavender scent still clinging to the sheets. This is my fault. I brought this into her life. I spent 5 years planning revenge, and now she's... Stop. Luca knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders. This is not your fault. This is mine. I built a world where the people I love are weapons used against me. But Grace, I swear to you I will get my mother back, and whoever took her will pray for death before I'm done. The cold fury in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, It steadied her. What do we do? We. Luca's eyes searched her face. You could walk away right now. This isn't your fight anymore. She's my family too. Grace's voice was steel. I've spent 5 years with her. I know her routines, her medications, her fears. If someone has her, she's terrified. She needs me. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be in my world completely. The violence, the darkness, all of it. I stopped belonging to the light the day I watched Marcus die. Grace met his eyes. Let me help you find her. Something shifted in Luca's expression, respect, maybe, or recognition. All right, but you follow my orders. No arguments. One condition. You're not in a position to negotiate. When this is over, you tell me the truth. Everything. Why someone wanted Marcus dead. Who's really behind this? No more secrets. Luca hesitated, then nodded. Deal. Vincent burst back into the room. Boss, we found something. Elena's phone, it was in her wheelchair. Someone sent a text an hour ago. He showed them the screen. The sins of the father fall on the son. Your mother's life for Grace Brown's truth. You have 24 hours to bring the girl to Pier 47. Come alone, or Elena dies. D. Grace's blood turned to ice. He wants me. He's not getting you. Luca's voice was absolute. Luca, if we don't, there's always another way. But his eyes were haunted. 24 hours. We find out who D is, why they want you, and we get my mother back without giving them what they want. And if we can't, Luca looked at her, and for the first time, Grace saw real fear in his eyes. Then I'll have to choose between my mother and... He stopped. And what? And someone I'm starting to realize I can't lose either. The confession hung between them, raw and impossible. Grace thought of Elena, kind, loving Elena, who'd become the mother Grace lost to cancer years before. Elena, who'd filled the hole Marcus's death had left. Elena, who'd loved Grace without conditions, without knowing the lies beneath. We'll find her, Grace said, more to herself than Luca. We have to. But as she looked at the photograph of her dead brother, at the empty wheelchair, at the man who was somehow both her enemy and her only ally, Grace wondered if finding Elena would be enough, or if everyone she loved was destined to be destroyed by the choices she'd made 5 years ago. Grace didn't sleep. Neither did Luca. They spent the night in his father's old study, a room that smelled of cigars and old leather, walls lined with books that had probably never been read. Vincent came and went with updates, each one more frustrating than the last. Dmitry Volkov had vanished. His usual haunts were empty. His associates claimed ignorance. But at 4 a.m., Vincent returned with something different in his eyes. Boss, we got a hit. One of Volkov's men got sloppy, made a call from a burner phone. We traced it to a warehouse in Red Hook. But there's something else. What? Luca demanded. Vincent glanced at Grace, hesitating. Maybe we should talk privately. She stays. Whatever you have to say, she needs to hear it. Vincent pulled out a tablet, showing them surveillance footage. This is from 5 years ago, the night Marcus Williams was killed. Grace's heart stuttered. She watched the grainy footage show her brother walking down a street, looking over his shoulder. He was scared. Then 2 men grabbed him, dragged him into an alley. We know this part, Luca said quietly. Watch. Vincent fast-forwarded. The footage switched to a different angle, a camera across the street. It showed a third figure, staying back, watching, making a phone call. Vincent zoomed in, enhancing the image. Grace's breath caught. The figure was a woman, mid-30s, elegant, even in the shadows, and around her neck, a distinctive necklace, a gold serpent eating its own tail. That's Natalia Volkov, Vincent said. Dmitry's daughter. She was there the night your brother died, Grace. She was watching. Why? Grace whispered. Why would she target Marcus? That's what I've been digging into. Vincent pulled up more files. Marcus Williams worked part-time at St. Mary's Hospital while he was in medical school, specifically in the records department. 3 weeks before he died, there was a breach. Someone accessed confidential patient files. What files? Luca asked. Natalia Volkov's. She'd had a medical procedure done, something she wanted kept secret from her father. The hospital flagged the breach, started an internal investigation. Marcus wasn't responsible, but he discovered who was another student who'd been paid to access the files. Grace's mind raced. Marcus would have reported it. He was always so ethical, so by the book. Exactly. And Natalia couldn't risk that information getting out, so she used Greco and your father's operation to eliminate the threat. Vincent looked at Luca. She's been in your organization this whole time, boss, working with her father, feeding him information. And when Grace showed up 5 years ago with her new identity, Natalia recognized her. Grace finished. She's been watching me, waiting. But why take Elena now? Luca's voice was tight. Why wait 5 years? Vincent pulled up one more file. Because Grace was getting too close. According to Elena's medical records, she updated her will last week, left everything including controlling shares in some of your legitimate businesses to Grace. Grace's head snapped up. What? I didn't know. She never told me. She loves you, Luca said quietly. She told me last week she wanted to make sure you were taken care of, that you deserved more than just a salary for everything you'd done. Tears burned Grace's eyes. I don't want her money. I just want her safe. Natalia sees it differently, Vincent continued. To her, you're a threat, the girl she tried to eliminate 5 years ago, now positioned to inherit power in the Santoro family. And with you getting closer to Luca, she decided to finish what she started. Luca finished, his voice cold, using my mother as bait. Grace stood abruptly, pacing. So what's the plan? We can't just hand me over. No. Luca's eyes were calculating. But we can make them think we are. He turned to Vincent. Get me everything on that warehouse. Layouts, access points, security, and call in everyone. I don't care if they're off duty or out of state. I want 50 men ready to move within 3 hours. Boss, if we go in heavy, they might kill Elena. They're not going to kill her. Luca's voice was absolute. She's their only leverage. But they're expecting me to come alone with Grace. So that's what they'll think they're getting. Grace understood. A decoy. You're not setting foot near that warehouse. Vincent, find me someone similar height, similar build, in the dark, from a distance. No. Grace stepped forward. It has to be me. Absolutely not. Luca, listen, if they have any kind of surveillance, they'll know it's a fake. But if I'm there, if I'm the bait... No. Luca's voice cracked. I'm not using you as bait. I won't. I can't. Why? The question came out softer than Grace intended. Why do you care what happens to me? I came here to destroy you. Luca crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping inches from her. His eyes, those grey eyes that had haunted her for 5 years, were raw, with something that looked like pain. Because somewhere between my mother's poetry readings and your terrible lemon cake, and the way you refused to be intimidated by me, I fell in love with you. The confession came out ragged. I know I have no right. I know my world, my family, everything I am is what destroyed yours. But Grace, if I lose you now, if something happens to you, nothing's going to happen to me, Grace interrupted, her own voice shaking. Because you're going to make sure of it. We do this together, Luca. We save Elena together. This is insane. Everything about us is insane. Grace reached up, touching his face. You're a mafia boss. I came to your house to ruin you. Your mother is the only reason we're not enemies. But somehow I can't imagine my life without you in it. Luca finished. Their foreheads touched, and Grace felt 5 years of hate crumbling, replaced by something terrifying and real. When this is over, she whispered, we have a lot to figure out. When this is over, I'm taking you and my mother far away from this city, somewhere safe, somewhere, one crisis at a time. Grace pulled back, steadying herself. What's the plan? Luca's eyes hardened, the vulnerable moment passing. You go in, wired for sound and video. Vincent and I position teams around the perimeter, close enough to respond, far enough not to spook them. The second we have eyes on my mother, the second we confirm she's alive, we move, Vincent finished. Hard and fast. And Natalia? Grace asked. Luca's smile was cold. She's mine. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Grace was fitted with microphones so small they were invisible, given an earpiece disguised as a hearing aid, briefed on emergency protocols and escape routes. At 6 a.m., as dawn broke over the city, they loaded into the SUVs. Luca pulled Grace aside before they left. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you run. You don't wait for my signal. You don't try to be brave. You run. I'm not leaving, Elena. Grace. Would you? She met his eyes. If it was someone you loved, would you run? Luca's jaw clenched. Then he pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation that spoke of all the things they hadn't had time to say. When they pulled apart, both were shaking. "Come back to me," he whispered. "Come get me," she countered. The warehouse loomed ahead, a decaying monument to a city that built its fortune on broken backs and blood. As Grace approached, alone as instructed, she felt the weight of every choice that had led her here. 5 years ago, she'd wanted revenge. Now, she just wanted everyone she loved to survive the night. Her earpiece crackled, Luca's voice steady despite everything. "I'm here, Grace. Right here. You're not alone." Grace took a breath and walked into the darkness. The warehouse door creaked open, and Grace Brown walked forward to face the demons of her past and possibly her future. The warehouse was a cathedral of shadows and rust. Grace's footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, each sound amplified by the cavernous space. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting skeletal patterns across the ground. "Hello, Grace," the voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Or should I call you Marcus Williams' little sister?" A spotlight snapped on, blinding. Grace raised her hand to shield her eyes, and when her vision adjusted, she saw her. Natalia Volkov stood on a metal catwalk above, elegant even in this industrial hell. The gold serpent necklace gleamed at her throat, the same one from the surveillance footage. Beside her, bound to a chair, was Elena. "Mrs. Santoro." Grace started forward. "Stay where you are." Natalia's voice was silk over steel. A gun appeared in her hand, aimed casually at Elena's head. "We wouldn't want any accidents." Elena looked terrified but unharmed. Her eyes found Grace's, and even across the distance, Grace could see the love there, the forgiveness. The woman knew everything now, knew Grace's real identity, her reasons for coming, and still looked at her like a daughter. "She's alive," Grace said quietly, for Luca's benefit. "Catwalk, northeast corner." "I hear you," Luca's voice whispered in her ear. "Positioning now. Keep her talking." "Why?" Grace called up to Natalia. "Why, Marcus? Why, Elena? What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, power." Natalia descended the metal stairs, her heels clicking rhythmically. 5 years ago, your brother threatened to expose me. A stupid medical procedure, a moment of weakness I couldn't afford my father knowing about, so I eliminated the threat. You murdered an innocent man. I removed an obstacle. Natalia reached the ground floor, gun still trained upward toward Elena. "Just like I'm removing you now. You've gotten too close to the Santoros. Elena treats you like family. And Luca," she smiled coldly. "Luca looks at you like you're his salvation. Can't have that. This isn't about me. This is about your father, isn't it? Dmitri wants the Santoro territories. My father is a fool who still thinks he can rule through fear and violence." Natalia circled Grace like a predator. "But I've been smarter. I've spent years embedded in Luca's organization, learning his weaknesses. And the biggest weakness of all? His capacity to love. Kill his mother, frame you for it, and Luca destroys himself with guilt and rage. The Santoro Empire crumbles, and we pick up the pieces. Except Luca knows the truth now," Grace said. "He knows you killed Marcus, knows you're the traitor." "Does he?" Natalia's smile widened. "Or will he find your body next to his mother's and assume you couldn't live with what you'd done? After all, you came here to destroy him. Everyone knows that now, thanks to my father's little performance at the gala." Grace's earpiece crackled. "Teams in position," Vincent's voice. "Awaiting your signal, boss." But Luca's voice didn't come. Something was wrong. Then Grace heard it, a scuffle somewhere in the warehouse. Shouts. Gunfire. Natalia's smile turned triumphant. "Did you really think I wouldn't have backup? My men are dealing with Luca's rescue party as we speak. It's just us now, Grace. You, me, and the old woman who loved you despite your lies." "Grace," Elena's voice rang out from above. "Whatever happens, I forgive you. I love you." Tears burned Grace's eyes. "I love you too, Mrs. Santoro. I'm so sorry." "How touching." Natalia raised her gun, aiming it at Grace. "Any last words?" Grace thought of Marcus, of Elena, of Luca, and the impossible love that had grown in the ruins of her revenge. She thought of all the choices that had led here, to this moment, to this ending, and she made one more choice. "Yes," Grace said calmly. "Duck." Elena, trusting Grace even now, threw herself sideways in the chair. The warehouse exploded with movement. Luca appeared from behind a support beam, weapon raised. Vincent and his team burst through side doors, and Grace, who'd spent 5 years learning everything about the Santoro operation, including their hand-to-hand combat training from the security team, lunged forward. She hit Natalia low and hard, disrupting her aim. The gun fired, but the bullet went wide. They crashed to the concrete, Grace fighting with every ounce of rage and grief she'd carried for 5 years. But Natalia was trained too. She twisted, getting the upper hand, the gun coming up. And Luca was there. His shot was precise, controlled. Not to kill, to disarm. The gun skittered away across the floor. "It's over, Natalia." Luca's voice was death itself. "You're done." Natalia laughed, even as blood seeped from her shoulder. "You think this ends with me? My father has evidence, recordings, documents, proof of every illegal thing the Santoros have done for 3 generations. Kill me, and it all goes public." "I know," Luca nodded to Vincent, "which is why Vincent has spent the last 2 hours raiding every Volkov property in the city. We have your father, we have his files, we have everything." The color drained from Natalia's face. "You lose," Luca said simply. While Vincent's team secured Natalia, Luca ran up the catwalk stairs. Grace followed, her legs shaking with adrenaline. Together, they untied Elena, who collapsed into both their arms, sobbing. "My children," she whispered. "Both my children are safe." Grace pulled back, tears streaming. "Mrs. Santoro, I'm so sorry. Everything I did, the lies." "Hush," Elena cupped Grace's face with trembling hands. "You came into my life broken, seeking revenge. But you stayed because of love. I know the difference, Kara. I've always known." "Mama," Luca said, his voice rough, "we need to get you to a hospital. Make sure you're okay." "I'm fine. Better than fine." Elena looked between them. "Because my son finally has someone worth fighting for, someone worth being better for." Luca's eyes met Grace's over his mother's head. In them, Grace saw the future complicated, difficult, but possible. "I have something for you," Grace said quietly. She reached into her jacket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "It's a letter. From Marcus. I found it in his things after he died. He wrote it the day before." Her voice broke. "He was going to testify about Natalia's corruption. He knew it was dangerous, so he wrote this, his last words." Luca took the letter with shaking hands. "He forgave them," Grace whispered. "Whoever came for him. He said he understood that people caught in systems of violence often become violent themselves. That breaking the cycle was the only way forward. That hate just breeds more hate. He was wiser than any of us," Elena said softly. Grace looked at Luca, the man she'd spent 5 years hating, then understanding, then impossibly loving. Marcus was right. Revenge doesn't heal anything. It just keeps the wound open. "So what do we do?" Luca asked. "Where do we go from here?" "Forward." Grace took his hand. "We go forward. Together. We use your power, your resources, to make things right, to help people instead of hurting them, to be better than the systems that made us. That's a long road. Good thing we have time." Luca pulled her close, and Grace let herself be held by the man who was both her past's nightmare and her future's hope. Around them, Vincent's team cleared the warehouse. Natalia was taken away. The evidence was secured. And for the first time in 5 years, Grace Brown or Williams, or whoever she chose to be, now felt something like peace. "Let's go home," Elena said, taking both their hands. "All of us. Together." As they walked out of the warehouse into the dawn, Grace thought about Marcus, about how he'd taught her that love was stronger than hate, that forgiveness was braver than revenge. She finally understood, and she finally knew how to let go. 6 months later, Grace stood in the garden of the Santoro estate, watching spring breathe life back into the world. The East Garden, where evidence of her brother's murder had once been buried, now bloomed with cherry blossoms and white roses. A memorial bench sat beneath the largest tree, a simple plaque reading, "Marcus Williams, healer, brother, light." "Beautiful, isn't it?" Elena's voice came from behind her. The older woman moved with a walker now, her physical therapy showing results that even the doctors called miraculous. Grace liked to think love had something to do with it. "It's perfect, Mrs. Santoro." "Elena," the older woman corrected gently, as she had been for months. "You're going to be family officially in 3 weeks. You should call me Elena, or Mama, if you're comfortable. Grace smiled, touching the engagement ring on her finger, a simple diamond that Luca had presented 2 months ago, not with grand gestures or elaborate plans, but quietly, in Elena's room, with his mother as witness. I can't promise you an easy life, he'd said, but I can promise you an honest one, and all the love I have to give. I'm still getting used to all of this, Grace admitted. A year ago, I was planning your son's destruction. Now, I'm planning a wedding. Life is strange that way. Elena settled onto the memorial bench, patting the space beside her. Tell me, do you still think about revenge? About what could have been? Grace sat, considering. Sometimes, but then I think about what Marcus wrote in that letter, about breaking cycles, about choosing love over hate. She looked at the plaque. He'd be proud of what we're doing, the changes Luca's making. The changes had been radical. In 6 months, Luca had begun systematically dismantling the most violent aspects of the Santoro operation. The loan sharking that had killed Marcus? Gone, replaced with legitimate lending programs for struggling businesses. The protection rackets? Transformed into actual security services with real contracts. The drug trade? Cut off entirely, despite the financial hit. It wasn't perfect. The transition was messy, dangerous. Some of Luca's old guard had left, unwilling to change. Others had fought back, requiring Vincent and his team to handle them, and the other crime families watched like vultures, waiting for weakness to exploit. But Luca was determined. And Grace stood beside him, using her brother's insurance money she'd saved for 5 years to fund community programs, medical clinics in underserved neighborhoods, scholarship programs for kids like Marcus who dreamed of becoming doctors, addiction treatment centers that actually worked. He's coming back today, you know, Elena said, pulling Grace from her thoughts. Called an hour ago, said he had news. Luca had been in Chicago for 3 days, meeting with other families, building alliances with those who wanted to move toward legitimacy. It was risky, reforming the mob from the inside, but it was the only way to ensure lasting change. Grace heard the car before she saw it, the familiar rumble of the SUV, though now Luca traveled with fewer guards, less pageantry. Trying to be a businessman instead of a warlord, he emerged from the vehicle and Grace's heart still skipped. 6 months, and he still had that effect on her. Tall, powerful, but with a softness in his eyes now that hadn't existed before. The softness she'd helped put there. Grace. He crossed the garden in long strides, pulling her into his arms. The kiss was deep, familiar, full of longing. Missed you. You were gone 3 days, she laughed against his mouth. 3 days too long. He turned to his mother. Mama, you look radiant. I feel radiant. Having my son home and in love agrees with me. Elena stood with her walker. Now, I'm going inside for my afternoon rest. You two, clearly, need privacy. After Elena left, Luca led Grace to the bench. His expression was serious, and Grace felt a flutter of anxiety. What's wrong? Did something happen in Chicago? Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's. Grace, I have something to tell you, something I should have told you months ago, but I needed to be sure first. Her heart hammered. Luca, you're scaring me. He took her hands. The night Marcus died, the men who killed him. Greco's enforcers. I found them. Grace went still. What? 2 of them died years ago, but the third he's been in prison for unrelated charges. I visited him yesterday, made him tell me everything about that night. Luca's voice was tight. Grace, Marcus didn't die because they beat him in that alley. What are you talking about? I saw him in the hospital. The internal bleeding was fatal, yes. But Grace, in the ambulance, before he lost consciousness, your brother told the paramedics something that got buried in the chaos. Luca pulled out his phone, showing her a document. He told them to tell his sister that he loved her, that he forgave everyone, and that the research he'd been doing about patient file security at the hospital, he'd hidden it somewhere safe, somewhere only you would think to look. Grace's breath caught. What research? Proof of Natalia's corruption, but also proof of a larger network of people exploiting hospital records for blackmail. Marcus wasn't just trying to protect Natalia's secret, he'd stumbled onto something bigger. And before he died, he made sure that information would survive. But I never found anything. I went through all his things. Where would Marcus hide something he wanted only you to find? What place would be meaningful only to you two? Grace's mind raced. Then suddenly, she knew. Our mother's grave. We used to go there together. There's a hollow space behind her headstone where we used to leave notes for each other when we were kids. Luca stood, pulling her up. Let's go, right now. An hour later, they stood in Street Augustine Cemetery. Grace's mother's headstone was simple. Sarah Williams, beloved mother. Grace hadn't visited in years, the grief too raw, mixed with everything else. With shaking hands, she reached behind the stone, fingers finding the familiar hollow. And there, sealed in waterproof plastic, was a USB drive. Back at the estate, they plugged it into Luca's computer. Files bloomed across the screen. Patient records, blackmail schemes, names of people involved, and a video file labeled, "For Grace." Grace clicked it with trembling fingers. Marcus appeared on screen, and Grace's breath shattered. He looked so young, so alive. His smile was the one she'd carried in her heart for 5 years. "Hey, Gracie," he said, "if you're watching this, something bad happened to me, and I'm so sorry for that. Sorry you have to hurt. Sorry I won't be there for your wedding, or to meet your kids, or to grow old annoying you with dad jokes." Grace laughed through her tears. Luca's arm wrapped around her shoulders. "But listen to me, baby sister. Whatever happened, whoever hurt me, don't let it make you hard. Don't let it fill you with hate. I've seen what hate does to people in this city. It eats them alive. Promise me you'll choose love. Promise me you'll be better than the systems that fail us." Marcus looked directly at the camera, as if he could see her across the years. "Find someone who sees your light, Gracie. Someone who makes you want to be better. And when you find them, don't let go. Don't let the darkness win. Be the light. I always knew you were." The video ended. Grace sobbed into Luca's chest, and he held her through it. All the grief she'd buried, all the pain she'd channeled into revenge, it poured out now. Finally, completely, when she could breathe again, she looked up at Luca. "He would have liked you. The you you're becoming." "I hope so." Luca wiped her tears with gentle fingers. "Grace, this drive, it has information that could help a lot of people. Expose corruption in medical systems across the city. We could give it to the FBI. Let them handle it properly. Marcus would want that. Justice, not revenge." "Then that's what we'll do." Luca kissed her forehead. "Together." 3 weeks later, Grace walked down the aisle in the estate's garden, Elena in the front row crying happy tears. The wedding was small, just family, and the few friends who'd stood by them through the chaos. Vincent served as best man, wearing a suit that made him look almost respectable. As Luca lifted Grace's veil, as their eyes met, Grace thought about the journey that had brought them here. From revenge to understanding, from hate to love, from darkness to light. "I love you," Luca whispered. "My light, my redemption." "I love you," Grace whispered back. "My unexpected future." They kissed as husband and wife, and the garden erupted in applause. That night, as they danced under string lights, Elena watching from her wheelchair with joy shining on her face, Grace felt Marcus's presence, not haunting, not accusing, but blessing. She'd come to the Santoro estate 5 years ago, seeking to destroy a monster. Instead, she'd found a man, a broken man trying to be better, a family that chose her, and a love that proved light could exist even in the darkest places. "What are you thinking?" Luca asked, pulling her closer as they swayed to the music. That Marcus was right. That love is stronger than hate. That forgiveness is braver than revenge. Grace looked up at her husband, her impossible, wonderful husband, and that sometimes the best endings are the ones we never saw coming. "To new beginnings," Luca said. "To breaking cycles," Grace replied. "To us. To us." And as they danced beneath the stars, Grace Brown, formerly Grace Williams, sister of Marcus, seeker of revenge, now wife of Luca Santoro and daughter of Elena, finally understood what her brother had tried to teach her, that the only way to honor the dead was to live fully, to love fearlessly, to choose light over darkness, even when darkness seemed easier. Especially then, the Black Maid had stayed by the Mafia boss's mother's side for years, but in the end, she'd found so much more than revenge. She'd found family, purpose, love. She'd found home. "You made it to the end, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you loved this story, the next one is going to blow your mind. I'm talking more twists, more emotion, more of everything that keeps you hooked. Click on that image on your screen right now and jump straight into the next tale. You're going to love it.